1, which, due to government advice to the public to practice social distancing, will be held virtually with committee members and officers accessing the meeting from remote locations. The meeting, sorry, we've got so many people coming in, it's disturbing my screen. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed subsequently. Please can everyone ensure all mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda on Tuesday the 12th of October, and for the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, but I would ask, with the exception of myself as chair, that at all other times you could keep your cameras and your microphones on mute. This will help to minimise any background noise and interference and ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. Officers from Scrutiny will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. And if any members wish to raise their point or question, they should please click on the raise hand button at the top of the Teams window and I'll come to you in turn. Please do not use the instant messenger chat to enter any questions or comments. Canon Edward Evans, could I ask you to turn your camera off, please? Thank you very much. I'll ask Lucy now to announce the names of the councillors in attendance at the meeting. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. The members of the committee in attendance are Councillor Tom Beadle, Councillor John Paul Blundell, Councillor Sorrel Dendy, Councillor Jane Gebby, Councillor Tom Gifford, Councillor Cheryl Green, Councillor Martin Jones, yourself, Chair, Councillor Kay Rawlins, Councillor Ros Sturman and Councillor Tim Thomas. And we also have the registered reps today, Lindsay Morris, and also Reverend Canon Edward Evans.
Thank you very much, Lucy. If Tracy or Meryl, if she's here, could come in and just clarify the declarations of interest. Oh, sorry, first of all, I'll go to apologies for absence. Do we have any, please, Lucy?
We do. The apologies I've received for absence are from Councillor Richard Collins and Councillor Pam Davis.
Councillor Blundell?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I please add the apologies of Councillor Bridie Sedgbeer? Thank you.
Thank you. I was jumping the gun a bit there. So item 2, if one of the scrutiny officers, please, could explain the declarations of interest rules for this this meeting. Thank you, Meryl.
Thank you, Chair. If members do not have to declare if they're a local authority governor, but any other governors, they would have to declare an interest.
Thank you very much. Is there any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Blundell.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare I am a community governor for Kevin Glass Infants.
Thank you very much. Canon Edward Evans.
Yes, I'm a community governor for Brinturian Comprehensive School.
Thank you. Lindsay Morris.
Yeah, I'm a parent governor at my state comprehensive school.
Councillor Tim Thomas.
Thanks, Chair. Former parent governor at Ysgol Brogo. My term of office is finished there, but I'm currently a community governor at Coleg Cymedol of Erwin and Bryn Menyn Primary. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Beadle.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's the old chestnut, I'm afraid. It's it's the elected chair of Bridgend Governors Association.
Okay. Councillor Canon Edward Evans. I believe I've already you've already put your declarations. There's nothing else, is there? And Lindsay Morris, I've still got your hands as well. Yep. Okay. Lindsay, you didn't want to come back in, did you?
No,
all hands up. That's no problem at all. Yeah. Thanks all. Item 3 is approval of minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of July. If I could have an mover and a seconder, please.
I'll move the minutes, Chair.
Thank you.
Can I add that under declarations of interest, I would have declared that I was a community governor of Brinturian Infants and that Brinturian Comprehensive, and that hasn't been recorded.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So thank you, Councillor Blundell, for moving the minutes. Sorry, did I have a seconder?
Yeah, Ross.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So item 4, I'll ask the officer to present the report. I'll then call upon members to indicate if they wish to speak by raising the hand button. Thank you. I'm not sure who's actually doing this report. Oh, Lindsay, is it?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to hand over to Sue Roberts, who's going to take us through the report.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, the scrutiny report then about school governing bodies. The purpose of the report then is to update the committee about how BCBC and Central South Consortium are able to support governing bodies, and also how support and training might develop in the future. Within the report then we've given some background information around what happened prior to 2015, where the local authority at that time had a dedicated governor support function. That function was deleted then because of one of the midterm financial strategies. Then Pupil Services team continues to provide support to governing bodies to ensure that they're able to fulfil their statutory responsibilities and to arrange training, to arrange appointments, recruitment, elections, and so on and so forth, as listed on the report. We've outlined the role of the governor. I think important to recognise that governors are volunteers, so there's no job description as such. But clearly there are qualities that we would be wanting and expecting then for governors to follow. Central South Consortium is commissioned to support schools and governing bodies, and in doing that they provide the mandatory governor training, and that's all kind of, and in attendance of the training is now managed by the governing bodies themselves, rather than the local authority sending out letters to individuals to say when perhaps they've become non-compliant. We found over the years that there's been an issue with low attendance to training sessions, particularly when it was held up at Nantgarw. So the sessions were brought to schools across Bridgend, and actually the attendance remained low. That has picked up actually since the pandemic because of the online training, and there's been a big increase in uptake there, so that may well be a way forward for the future, I think. So currently then Central South Consortium, as part of their school improvement services, are delivering on the mandatory training. That includes things like new governor induction, it includes things like head teacher performance management, to name but a few, but also it includes the challenge and support module from Central South Consortium as we appended to this report then, and again outlines the statutory functions of governors and the expectations of them. I think within the report we've noted that the local authority no longer offers the kind of dedicated clerk-in service that we once did. So schools arrange that either within their school or they arrange that privately, perhaps through a kind of private company. That shift in practice does actually align with Welsh Government expectation that schools have greater independence and they're moving more to a self-improving system. And yeah, I think that seems to be the way that's working. From 2016 then there was a relaunch of the Bridgend Governors Association, where governors are automatically made members of that association. It's independent from the local authority. It works with governor improvement groups as part of the kind of support network, and works with the improvement partners from Central South Consortium then, where they obviously offer in support, and I've mentioned already through things like the performance management for head teachers. I think that's probably the bulk of the report that I've done very quickly. Just checking that I've not missed anything out of there really that's kind of key. I think what we're looking at there is kind of implications then. It's just asking you to consider the content of the report and provide any feedback, any thoughts on that. Thank you.
That's great, thank you very much. I did have quite a number of questions from the floor. I've got no hands up at the moment, but yeah, okay, so hands are starting to come up. I'll bring you in as we spoke about the pre-meeting. So Councillor Jane Gebby, please, first.
Oh.
We can hear you, Jane.
Thank you very much. I am sorry, I've got a terrible internet connection, so if I turn my camera off, it's because it says that I have a poor connection. I'm quite happy to note the report, and I'm really conscious that I'm a school governor, as a council officer elsewhere, I'm fully understanding of what support and guidance is offered by the local authority, and this is just another example. I think the way we've deliver it has just been changed somewhat, has just been explained. But I wonder about anybody sitting in a school, so the head teachers, the teaching assistants. We're talking about a change of the way we deliver things. Do they think that has improved for them or not? Because this report looks very good, but actually at the end of it all, it's like the next report. It looks very, very good. But I'd want to know how other people who have to deliver the service on the ground are finding all our back office functions. Because, you know, like we're sitting here today virtually, I'm very conscious that our teachers are in school, as are our TAs, as are our dinner ladies. But there are people providing support services, and do they think they get the same support that they've always had, I suppose? And there is do you mind if I put my second question at the same time, please,
yeah,
Chair?
That's fine.
There's a question about what support is offered for governors who end up dealing with child protection investigations, because as Chair of Governors for Minith Cynvig, so I'll declare that now because I'm aware my head is here. I'm very conscious that I don't think they would have all the skills necessary to assist themselves, whereas we may know that the trauma that somebody is suffering, even if it is vicariously, we would refer them to occupational health. We would do that as a member as well. But what happens for our governors, and are they provided the same support? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Councillor Gebbie, I should say. I've got quite a few hands up. I'll take that in two sections. So the first was for, support for governors and head teachers. How do people feel that they're being supported at the moment? I've only got one. Oh, Nick Dart has just gone down. Were there any governors or sorry, parent governors or community governors or head teachers who'd like to comment on that? Perhaps somebody may want to come in a little later. Mr. R. Power. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, not bad at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm head teacher at Bryntyrion Comprehensive School. I think it is the case that the opportunities are certainly available for governors within my school to get the necessary training that they require. I think a lot of it is obviously around the mandatory training, and the mandatory training also is very standards and data rich and ready. And over this period of time, it's not been the major focus. So I think the major focus for schools has been to deal with all the issues associated with the pandemic, which has been very, very difficult for governors to understand. For example, around things like risk assessment and so on, that we've had to try to provide our own support and training on. So we are in a different circumstance now. I think when you read through the documentation, a lot of the support is related to accountability, of course, and challenge, and needs to be. But during this last couple of years, particularly, the focus has been more on reactive and survival, and how the governors support schools in doing all of that. But it's what is available is good, and the governors benefit from it certainly.
Great. Okay. There's nothing you can pinpoint that you need more at this time, is there?
I don't think so. Not at this moment in time. I think we've just rejigged all our committees. So what we try to do through the committees is rewrite the terms of references and work that through ourselves. But I know that if I have any concerns with regard to the support that might be needed for a standards or curriculum or staffing committee, I can ask for that support from the clerking team, who put me in the right direction.
Great. Okay. Can I bring in Nick Dart, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm Nick Dart. I'm the Chair Governors at Ysgol Gymraeg Bogor, and thank you for the invitation this afternoon. Firstly, an observation. The member was asking about support for governors. A big thank you to Councillor Beadle and the Education Director for the Bridgend Governors Association Group. That's been really helpful for governors. It's a shame more governors don't attend. Having that direct access to the education director is absolutely invaluable. The support we get from the Central South Consortium is outstanding, to be fair. Our improvement partner, I'll be honest, sometimes historically they've been of differing quality. At the moment, our improvement partner is outstanding. We couldn't ask for any be better. I think our concern over the training question is timings. It's availability. We are all volunteers, of course. Getting to Nangarrow for 4:30 on a Thursday evening was nigh on impossible. And we actually have a safeguarding training this Wednesday evening at 5 until 7, which of course is on Teams, which is great. But from a family perspective, of course, 5 until 7 isn't always easy. So, you know, I mean, from a governance perspective, the member asked a question about safeguarding training as well. So the brand new safeguarding policy we are adopting currently in FGBs states that the safeguarding lead has to have level 3 or equivalent. In Bridgend, this is a multi-agency training. Having just booked on it myself, I can confirm that this is a full 2-day course in March. I'm fortunate the fact that I'm in a position where I'm able to spend 2 days in front of a screen, but of course this may not be the same for other governors, and perhaps splitting up training like that into a few consecutive evenings may be more helpful. We do have a comprehensive selection of training from the consortium, and we're grateful for that, but there are certain courses at BCBC level which do need to be addressed at the moment after the pandemic, such as safer recruitment. So a few of our governors are waiting for safer recruitment training, and I think, as the head teacher just explained, you know, chairs and head teachers are currently coping at the moment because we appreciate the fact that, you know, it's difficult times. But I think as things start to come out of the pandemic eventually, I think it'd be good to see a comprehensive training schedule back on board. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Nick. Got a few more hands coming up now. So let's go to, can we go to Francis Clegg, please?
Hi, I just wanted to add, you know, with regards to the workload of governors, obviously we're very mindful that governors are volunteers, but from us being a Catholic school, sometimes the training provided on occasion clashes with that of the Archdiocese. So I'm very grateful for all the work that our governors do, and I know the colleagues from our feeder primaries would think the same, but I am aware that sometimes it can be a little bit of an overload for those governors who are potentially receiving training from two bodies, and that can be quite overwhelming for them with the amount of time that they need to give up in the evenings. It's great that everything has gone online, but I am very aware of that work-life balance for governors and the fact that they are all volunteers. So there's that additional element of the Archdiocese training for lots of the specific elements for us as a Catholic school as well.
Right, okay, thank you. Appreciate those comments. Who have we got? Neil Davis, please. Oh, Neil, your hand's gone down. Do you not need to speak anymore? Oh, hi.
Sorry, here I am. Yeah, I'd echo everything that's been said so far, and particularly my colleague Ravi in Brintirian Comprehensive. And I know I certainly am very appreciative of all the time and the effort that our governors put in. This is just something built on the question of what training extra training or whatever may governors need, and this is just going on an experience a friend of mine is going through at the moment, who happens to be a chair of governors in a neighbouring authority, and it's in the event of a serious incident happening, the support of the local authority and the support, where can you turn to for support at those times? Because right now she's not really feeling supported. She's her own personal health is suffering because she feels a little bit as though she's on her own. And I was just, I suppose, from a governor's point of view, then is to know where to turn to in the event of a serious incident in school happening, that there are kind of safety nets and support there for governors in situations such as that.
Right, okay, thank you. I've got hands still up from, I think some of these are legacy hands, but Tom, would you like to come in on this section as Chair of Governors? Sorry, Councillor Beadle, I shouldn't say Tom.
That's quite all right, Kay.
Sorry, apologies.
No, it's quite interesting. I mean, I haven't been a governor for many years. I've been in some very difficult situations as chair. I know that sometimes you can take little comfort in having support from a local authority, but in times gone by, I found that I had support from what was then Governors Wales, and I actually started as a board member on Governors Wales, and we provided support and information to all the governors, because every governor was basically a member, and that was a facility that was open to everybody, and it was funded by the Welsh Government. But since the Welsh Government withdrew the funding, it subsequently changed now to become a paid service, and it's actually, I think it's called Cymru Governors Support Service. And if your school is fortunate enough to buy into the service level agreement, then you get a lot of support from those people. But I know that some of the difficult situations I've had, because the head teachers that you're involved with are bought into capital law, then as chair of governors, you can liaise with them. So there's lots of advice and information and support available, but it's knowing where that support is. I mean, that is the important bit, and I think that's an item for me as chair of the Governors Association to bring forward to one of our meetings. But in all fairness, I know that Nick Dart alluded to this, to the fact that the working relationship that the Governors Association have got with our director, and he's there at every meeting, and he offers that line of support, which is important. But I will add that going back to training, it is a big commitment of members of a governing body to firm up subcommittees and attend the termly governing body meeting and do training, as well as working full time or even bringing up a family. So that, as I say, we are volunteers, and it takes a big commitment in order to be on a governing body. But realistically, that there is a few issues that need to be addressed, and I think one of the issues for me, I mean, I know the Centre South is very supportive, and I've had many a contact with Andy Rothwell, and he was supported the association. But what I'd like to see is the fact that more around governor induction, and also the fact that there's a governor's handbook, and not many people are familiar with, because when I first became a governor, that was in hard copy form, and now that's in electronic form, and it's quite a good read. It's quite a heavy read, actually, but that should be part of the basis and information given to new governors every time. But I will say that because of my longevity on the governing body, when it comes down to governor induction, that I personally carry that out in my school, but I know of many schools where governors attend their first meeting and they've had no introduction whatsoever. So that it's that type of support is actually needed. And what we say about the Governors Association, we've got 800 governors in Bridgend, I think some 59 schools, and sometimes the association is not very well attended. But in all fairness to the director, that he has considerable input to make sure that our governors get the best from our association.
Thank you, Councillor Beadle. I think everyone's spoken on the list other than Councillor Tim Thomas. Councillor Thomas, is it with regards to this issue? Because I'm quite conscious there's a lot here that we've our cabinet members or our officers need to answer already.
Yeah, I think it kind of is. In the declaration of interest, I did outline that I've been a governor at 3 schools, and I've had varying degrees of experience in that time. Interviewed a head teacher, which was a very interesting and enjoyable experience, and then disciplinaries, which wasn't quite so enjoyable, but equally important. And those aspects of being a governor was something that I found particularly interesting and rewarding. But I'm wondering, as part of the support in providing effective challenge as governors, I'm wondering if there's a way that we can have more opportunities to have hands-on practical experience in the schools. So without naming the school, there was one school I was a governor at where they had a little bit of difficulties with the logistics of dinner time. So I went in person to have dinner with the kids, which was very interesting. That helped me as a governor understand some of the challenges. At another school, I think they had a couple of little problems with with logistics in terms of school buses, and there were a couple of complaints locally from local residents. So, I went down there and donned the fluorescent yellow jacket and had that practical experience. So I'm looking at opportunities to physically interact with the day-to-day running with the schools. One thing I did request as a governor was if I could actually view a lesson, and that was declined. I can understand why. I think the unions were a bit concerned about that in the past because, you can understand why. But the request wasn't to judge teachers, really. It was to try and understand some of the issues, really. But yeah, that's my general question, really. If we can have more practical hands-on experience without, obviously, just to say this quickly, obviously, I appreciate that that's difficult in this present time. I do appreciate that. But going forward, that could be quite useful.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I wonder if Councillor Beadle could take that on board as part of his discussions in his future head of, as your chair of governors, if that's okay. I'll leave that to one side for now. Lindsay and Susan, could you possibly come back and respond to some of these things that we've had commented on? So we've got so the mandatory training seems to be a big issue, and the timings of the training meetings. And the other one is safety nets, and whether serious incidents, and of course the occupational health side of things for governors there, and what support is there for them if they're not able to have the support from the Cymru Governors Support Services. Thanks, Lindsay.
I'm happy to pick that up if that's okay. Just for the benefit of the recording, I'm Lindsay Harvey, Corporate Director, Education and Family Support. There's some key elements there. First of all, just a big thank you to all the governors who are with us today. Again, I think we'll all recognise the fact they do an amazing job for our schools and totally unpaid, so thank you. As far as the training is concerned, Central South Consortium, to be fair, have been excellent with regarding to flexible training. When we asked them to localise the training within Bridgend, they did that. We've since moved on to online training. You can probably see from the report there's been a better take up. So I think that's probably something that we've learned and we will be maintaining going forward. One of the points I think that Councillor Tim Thomas has just raised is a really important one about giving experience to governors. I was a school governor for 8 years, and again, that practical experience is invaluable. And part of the offer from Central South Consortium is how you pair up with other schools. So, for example, within the governors' improvement groups or within school improvement groups, and that's certainly something we can look at when we return to more normal times, and to work through some of those opportunities for governors. Councillor Beadle has always referenced as well the support that Bridgend Governors Association provides, which is phenomenal. Very active Governors Association, and I know that Councillor Beadle does a lot of work. We're trying to connect governing bodies and connect governors, so certainly that would be an offer for governors going forward. Councillor Beadle also referenced the facility that's available to all schools in Bridgend via the service level agreement from Capital Law. Now that's something we brokered through an open tender exercise some 3 years ago. So that gives expert legal advice to all of our schools, including governors. So I know a lot of governing bodies have taken that up. And the last point is with regard to that sort of safety net or the really tight, difficult issues, especially with regard to safeguarding and child protection that I know that Councillor Gebby referenced earlier. Very recently, the local authorities established a vulnerable group support group, and that is a team that's dedicated primarily to schools. to support schools, school leaders and governing bodies in support of challenging child protection issues and with regard to working with our colleagues in social services to provide that expert bespoke advice. So I think, Chair, there's a fair bit there. What I've been doing, the same as you, I've been making notes, and certainly what we'll be doing coming from this meeting is that we'll be going to Central South and to improve the offer going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. I think there was one thing that I would just reiterate was the occupational health side of things, was the trauma that perhaps governors had been through, being subject to the information that if you can add that to that. You've probably got it down already, but just in case. I've got a few hands up. I'm not sure if they're legacy hands. If they are, can you pop them down, please? Neil Davis, did you want to come back in? No.
Sorry,
okay.
no, I didn't. No.
Okay. Canon Edward Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the 2 points I raised a little earlier, both in a sense are very pertinent at the moment. One of the questions that has been asked for very many years, back in the days of Ogre Borough Council and now in the times of Bridgend County Borough Council, is what level, if any, personal liability insurance or governors is provided either by the local authority or by Central South. As we read through this list and look at the Governor's Handbook, the responsibilities of governors are quite onerous, and there are various areas in which they may make mistakes or get themselves into, and their governing body, into trouble. I'm just wondering, as I said, this question has been asked for very many years, never with a positive answer. What level of personal liability insurance is there for governors? And then the other question, in a sense related to this, is has there ever been any thought or any will to have what I would call professional governors? I don't mean having solicitors or accountants on your governing body. I mean paid governors. We've heard of the demands that are made of governors and how time consuming it is. I'm in the fortunate position of having retired, so I can meet with my head teacher whenever, or anybody else, whenever necessary. But if a governor is working, has family commitments, that may not always be possible. So is there any thought to having what I would call paid professional governors? Just two areas for thought. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canon Edward. Lindsay, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think they're two really important questions. The first one, Canon Evans, I would need to get legal advice on that, so I want to give you a definitive answer, and I'm not going to attempt that today without legal advice. One thing I will do, though, Chair, I will endeavour to get that answer back quickly. So obviously I'm a bit disappointed that response has not come back. I'll make sure that's done as quick as possible. The second one, we don't have any paid governors in Bridgend. I know Welsh Government looked at this a few years back with the professional governor route. Again, I don't know the status of where that review is at. I don't know whether Central South Consortium colleagues are closer to that detail. So through you, Chair, I don't know whether Andrew or Andy have got any closer knowledge of that.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good afternoon, everybody. No, I'm not aware of any further detail on that at the moment, Lindsay. What I would say, just as a sort of a middle layer, is Central South have recently introduced regional leads of governors. So they are a set of governors, and Andrew will be able to provide a little bit more detail here, but a set of governors from across the region who are able to be deployed to work alongside other governing bodies. So, for example, if a head teacher or a governing body identify that they'd like some further support in a particular area, maybe around self-evaluation or school improvement, these regional leads of governors can be deployed to work with a governing body to help them develop in that specific area. Andrew, is there anything more that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think you've covered it there, Andy. I think the regional leads for governors we're seeing as a really important tool to support governing bodies, because we're recognising some of the real challenges governing bodies are now facing, particularly with the significant reforms in education, and those governing bodies that require that additional support, we're now able to provide that. And similarly, if a governing body finds themselves in difficulties and without a chair, we may be able to find ourselves in a position of being able to try and facilitate a chair for those governing bodies as well.
Right. Did you want to come back on that, Canon Edwards? Edward, sorry.
No, it's okay. I get called all sorts of things. It's not a problem.
Apologise.
It's much easier to just call me Edward.
Okay.
No, that's fine. I was aware of these governors who are available for support. I was just thinking of individual governing bodies that may be struggling to get governors or to get volunteers onto their governing bodies because of the time that is needed. And as Ms. Clegg referred to, it's not only just attending governing body meetings, it's also training, it's also other subcommittees, all sorts of things. And it's something I discussed with Eston some years ago in another context. And I'm just wondering whether that's moved forward in any way, shape or form. Thank you.
Lindsay, did you want to add anything to that section? I've got a couple of...
Not at this stage, Chair. The only thing is, while the colleagues have been answering the question, I've been looking at the new guidance from Welsh Government with regard to personal indemnity, and I can confirm the Welsh Government have produced new guidance on governing bodies and the legal responsibilities in this autumn term. So what I'll do, with your permission, Chair, I'll circulate that through scrutiny to make sure all members avail themselves of that information.
Thank you, that's great. I apologise if I'm not bringing the hands in at the right time, but can I bring in Nick Dart now, please?
Thank you again, Chair. Just a quick point on the topic of support for governing bodies. I think it's important for Scrutiny to be aware of the SLAs that governing bodies have at present. So as just one representative governing body, as well as support for obviously from the authority and the consortium, we also have financial SLAs with our private clerking service, as previously mentioned, who are brilliant, and to be honest, they keep us out of jail. With Judicium for a data protection SLA, Governors Cymru, as alluded to previously by Councillor Beadle, and obviously with capital law as well. So I think historically it may have been the case, the fact that a governing body had to depend solely on the authority, whereas now fortunately there are a wide variety of options, of course, as long as the governing body has the finances available there. So
yeah, that's good to hear. It is all about finances, so unfortunately, isn't it? Mr. Power.
Thank you very much. Just one thing I think that governors will need support with in the secondary school sector this year will be to help the schools make the decision about whether they're ready for the reform agenda, particularly in determining whether or not to roll out the Year 7 curriculum in 2022 or 2023, because that decision has got to be made this term. And I would suppose that it would be the support of our improvement partner and Central South in helping governors who particularly are on curriculum and standards committees to be in a position to really understand the readiness of a school to take that on in the first year. So that's just something that's an observation on my part, because I'm comfortable that, advising the governing body myself, but I know that Central South will have a role to play in that also.
Okay. Andy, do you want to comment on that?
I think Ravi's absolutely correct. The improvement partner is there to support the school, support the head teacher, and support the function of a governing body. And I think that dialogue, professional conversation around reaching decisions, very, very important. So yeah, absolutely agree.
Great, thank you very much. And Councillor Beadle, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean that Nick Dart had contributed to some of what I was going to say. But I also was looking for support for recruitment of governors, and my recent experience, because we just had an annual general meeting, and to find out that I got 2 parent governor vacancies, I got 1 LA vacancy, and I got 1 community governor vacancy, and I had 3 absentees, so that it was very difficult within an annual general meeting to try and firm up subcommittees, because you get it's the same old, and these governors that are not present are not getting the experience. And of course, that is a question of having to get these new governors on board and train them up in order to be effective on committees. So I think there's a certain onus on the local authority to support school governing bodies as regards to promoting these vacancies, so that they can assist us with with these elections, because I know that governing bodies actually elect the community governor, and parents elect the parent governors, whereas the cabinet appoints LA governors. So I think that there ought to be more of a campaign, shall I say, advertising governor vacancies and what we can actually do in order to make sure that it gets out to the right people so we can fulfill those vacancies. But one of the other things that worries me is the fact that independent governors, I mean, they've been around for a long time, but we've also got independent governors that sit on child protection panels with schools. And it's quite interesting to find out how many of these governors, although they're volunteers, and they sit on these child protection panels within the schools, but their level of training and understanding on child protection, and yet they volunteer, they're on the list, and they're called in order to go into the schools. So that I'd like to see that firmed up, because if a governing body is dealing with child protection issues, and the chair is part of that, and on this new level 3, then these independent governors should be coming in, should be at that same level. And that was an issue that I wanted to bring to the attention of the director, and see that if that is a way forward for us.
Thank you, Councillor Beadle. Lindsay, do you want to come in on that, please?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Beadle. I agree, is the simple answer. We have 3 corporate priorities as far as education is concerned, and safety is number 1, and that safety is safeguarding and health and safety. So to allow the school and to allow the head teacher to dispense their duties effectively, obviously we're going to need to have the governing bodies and members of governing bodies being well trained. So any move for me to make sure that training is better, you're pushing an open door there. So I'd certainly welcome conversation with Councillor Beadle and other governors after this meeting, see how we can refine that, Chair.
Thank you, Lindsay. I've just got, sorry, Nick Dart, did you want to come back in? No, I think it's possibly a legacy hand. Okay, there's just one more thing from the report that we picked out, and it was with regards to the job description. We understand that there is a role here set out for governors, but is there something in place where the governors actually agree to adhere to actually trying to perform this role? Because there's been comments that some governors seem to be not really doing what they should be doing, and we could do with getting rid of them. And also the second one is it used to be if governor did not complete mandatory training, they could be suspended, whereas at the moment the local authority no longer looks at that, and it's the governing body who has to actually make sure that people are being trained themselves. So is it time to revisit that, just to make sure we've got more that we've got more control over who can be a governor, who can't be? Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks, Chair. Happy to look at it again. I think part of the guidance that's been issued recently by Welsh Government looks at the role of the governor and the requirements of being a governor in more detail. So I think what we'll need to do as officers, we need to go through that in some detail now, especially in light of the conversation we've had today. And then what we'll do then, we'll obviously then within the director's newsletter, we'll issue more guidance to school governors on it. But again, just a plea, if I may, Chair, through you, is if there are governors on this panel, again, we have some very experienced governors who are sitting as part of this discussion. If there's any suggestion that we can sharpen up our processes as a local authority, I'm all ears. And as governors know, please ring me and I'll be happy to talk through any issues or suggestions they have.
That's great. Thank you, Lindsay. Nick, you've still got your hand up. Nick Dart, did you want to come back in?
Apologies, Chair.
No,
It's
no
down.
problem.
It isn't up on the screen, so I believe Teams may be having a.
Yeah, it's down on mine now. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Cheers.
Okay, so I have got Councillor Martin Jones. We've already talked about safeguarding, but I think you came in from a slightly different angle. Do you still want to comment further, Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair, and hello, everyone. The issue I raised in our pre-meet really was about personal responsibility, which is clearly outlined in page 14 and paragraph 3.3 of the report. And of course, personal responsibility extends to a very important feature of governorship, and that is safeguarding. And I just wanted to raise this operational issue, which I'm picking up. And that is, there are still appears to be lots of school children out there at the moment who are not attending school. It's a parental responsibility, as we know, but parents are, I don't know, exercising some sort of right not to send their children to school. And I felt particularly vulnerable as a governor when I questioned what the school are doing. The school are doing everything that they can to support the child, to support the parent. They work very closely with education welfare officers, but I just extend that further. And are we confident and satisfied that there is a one council approach and that we are being supported by perhaps child protection colleagues if such a child protection issue exists? And it just reinforces perhaps the issue which Karen Edwards made earlier, and that is personal responsibility of governors. Because when you sit there in these meetings and this information is presented to you, you do tend to think outside of the school walls in terms of your safeguarding responsibilities.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Lindsay, please, if you can.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank
and
you.
again, you obviously want to echo what Councillor Jones has just said there. Obviously, this is a very serious responsibility for all school governors, and we need to support you in that. As far as the local authority is concerned, there's probably two mechanisms I would certainly encourage chairs of governors in particular to liaise with our teams on. All colleagues here will know Dave Wright. Dave Wright is our new group manager for vulnerable groups, and as part of his remit then he'll work with Education and Welfare Service and also with schools and supporting those learners who are at home. So not just selectively home educated, but those who don't come to school. So we make sure there's support there. And obviously we liaise very closely with colleagues in social services and wellbeing with regard to the child protection safety side of things. Myself and Claire Marchant, who's my counterpart in social services and wellbeing, we chair a monthly early help and safeguarding board. So the two teams that get together regularly and share information and data, and obviously then that's escalated to council where appropriate. But one of the things that I'm very keen to do is if there are elements, so first of all, I have committed to providing additional information to Karen Evans and to other members of this group with regard to the personal responsibilities and indemnity, which I'll certainly do this week. But in addition then to Councillor Jones's point, if there are additional bespoke training models that we can either arrange or broker through the local authority in Central South, I'd be more than happy to do them. One of the things that's certainly coming out of this meeting, Chair, is around that responsibility for governors with regard to safeguarding and child protection, and I'd be only too happy to take that forward.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's great. I think that we've covered everything that we wanted to in the report. I've got no further hands up unless there's anything further. So the committee is requested to consider the recommendations of the cover report set out in paragraph 9.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Move.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second.
I'll
Chair.
second.
Thank you very much. So moving on to item 5, I will the new curriculum for Wales. I'll ask the officer to present the report, please.
Thanks, Chair. With your permission, I'd like to bring in Natalie Gould. And I think it's testimony to the excellent relationship we have with Central South Consortium. We have the Managing Director, the Deputy Managing Directors and the Principal Improvement Partners with us today. So I know, Chair, you welcome their involvement as well. So thank you.
Prynhawn Da, good afternoon, everybody. You will have read the report, so I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking through the main points and then obviously any questions that may be related. So I'm Natalie Gould, I'm the Assistant Director at Central South Consortium for Curriculum. So the first section of the report I'm going to draw your attention to is section 3, which gives the background to curriculum reform in Wales. So there's information there regarding successful futures, the review that took place about the whole education system by Professor Graham Donaldson and team in 2014. You may know that all 60 recommendations that were recommended to Welsh Government as part of that report were accepted, and therefore education reform in Wales over the past 5 years has been based on those recommendations. The reforms have been wide-ranging, so they've included all areas of education in Wales, from professional teaching and leadership standards and assistant teaching standards, a total reform of initial teacher education, schools as learning organisations, the national approach for professional learning, the establishment of a leadership academy, the ongoing review of qualifications, a commitment to a self-improving system and school-to-school support, and then particularly Curriculum for Wales, which is the focus of this report, alongside the ALN reforms and also the evaluation framework reform. So whole education system in reform. A huge part of the actual reform of the curriculum has been undertaken with co-construction of a new framework and guidance that 8 schools across Bridgend were involved in as pioneer schools, so 60 schools across the region, 8 schools from Bridgend, and they included actually researching and writing the curriculum alongside regional colleagues, experts from around the world. And that curriculum as a draft was published in January 2020. So a framework and guidance were published then. There has been further iterations, there's been further guidance, and there is some further guidance to follow. So only last week there was some further guidance that was released, and there is further information to follow. But we know that earlier this year, the bill was passed through the Senedd. It has now had royal assent, so we're moving forward. As you already heard from one of our head teacher colleagues, there have been some amendments to some of that due to COVID. So the information particularly around Year 7 rollout, and like has already been mentioned, we'll be supporting colleagues in schools to make those decisions for Year 7 ready for 2022 or 2023. So although lots of things are still ongoing, there are regular updates that we're providing to schools, we're providing to local authorities, and we're working with Welsh Government on. The report contains information specifically about what is significantly different to current curriculum and Curriculum for Wales. So that is in section 3, and the definition itself of curriculum is much more broader ranging now. So in Welsh Government, the definition is everything a learner experiences in pursuit of the 4 purposes. And that was one of the first recommendations that were adopted by Welsh Government. It is a purpose-led curriculum. So those 4 purposes are at the heart of all curriculum planning and all decision making in schools. There's also then further significant changes, a 3 to 16 continuum rather than key stages. Individual subjects and disciplines are still throughout the curriculum, but they've been planned together within areas of learning and experience, and that is to promote looking for purposeful, meaningful connections within and across areas of learning. And then there's also defined the mandatory elements of the curriculum. So relationships and sexuality education, religion and values and ethics, English, Welsh, and the cross-curricular skills. So all of this information is contained in the report and also available on Hub. And like I've said, there's further guidance and information always becoming available, and we'll keep you up to date with any of that. A key document and a key bit of part of information is in section 4. So a key document that was released very recently was the second iteration of a document called Journey to 2022. And what that gives is a framework of support for schools in the phases towards curriculum rollout. So the first phase is suggested as engagement phase, where schools look at themselves as learning organisations. They focus on getting to know the framework. They focus on defining a vision for the school. The second phase then is designing, planning and trialling the curriculum, moving into a third phase of evaluating and preparing for first teaching, and then first teaching from the mandatory dates of implementation, which for primary schools, remember, is still September 2022. There's the flexibility around Year 7 for secondary schools, either September 2022 or 2023. And then there's a rollout from Year 8 onwards in secondary schools right up until 2025, with the new qualifications coming online then for 2025, 2026. All of the professional learning support in Central South is aligned to this document. So there's been a really comprehensive and well engaged with professional learning programme for senior leaders based on the detail in section 4.15. So leading change, establishing vision, making time and space for professional learning. You can see these align to those phases. And then in the summer term, we focused on supporting schools, particularly with curriculum design. Again, very good participation from schools right across the region and Bridgend schools. So I think over 80% of Bridgend schools attended those modules. And then alongside that, we've had a middle leaders asynchronous version. So this has been some pre-recorded, some playlists, and then also network meetings every term for the different areas of learning. What I would say alongside the specific professional learning programme related directly to Curriculum for Wales support is embedded right throughout our curriculum offer. So aside from current qualifications, all of our leadership programmes, our newly qualified teacher programmes, our curriculum focus programmes are all underpinned now by the framework and guidance of Curriculum for Wales and aligned to the vision and aspirations of Curriculum for Wales. There are a number then in the rest of the section on a number of national, regional projects, networks, pilots, working parties and programmes that underpin further that work. So there are details on what some of those projects have been, and if members would like, we've got some details on the number of schools in Bridgend who have partaken in lots of those projects and pilots. And in Central South Consortium, all of our professional learning is free at point of access to schools, and then there is further funding for many of these projects for schools to participate in to cover release supply costs covers. And at the moment, I think we've got 34 further projects going on beyond some of the details in here that support curriculum design, curriculum pedagogy, and a number of Bridgend schools then are participating in those, and those are fully funded for schools to participate in. The last part there in section 4 just talks about the bespoke support we offer for schools and clusters again, so across the region, and we have had a number of schools and clusters in Bridgend who, beyond the general offer of professional learning, the Central South team are available to support schools with some more bespoke work, somewhere things that are more pertinent in their journey to 2022, and of course their improvement partners are in regular contact with head teachers, brokering that support and supporting their schools as learning organisations development. You can see there then there's just some final information, and in the appendix then there's just some detail on particularly the mandatory elements of the curriculum, just for attention of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Natalie. Bring in Councillor Charles Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just lower my hand because I'm sure to forget to do that if I don't. That's down. Thanks, Chair, and thanks for that presentation, Natalie, and thanks to everyone who's compiled that report. I think it is a first-class report. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to print it out because it gives me a very concise and succinct summary of how the curriculum has been developed and how it's going to progress over the next couple of years. And I would draw members of this committee's attention to two things in particular. One is the cross-curricular nature of this curriculum, where very importantly, subject specialisms are mentioned because you need specialist subject teachers before you can go cross-curricular. And the second important feature, I think, is the staged process, which Natalie has outlined. I can give you a perspective. I could go on for hours, actually. I promise I won't. But I've been in education long enough now to have seen curriculum initiatives come and go, and like some of my colleagues on Central South, I've been around long enough to see things go around in a great circle and come back again as new things which have just been invented, but in fact many of them are failed things which have been tried before and failed previously. I can go back to 1975, when as a school teacher, among professionals, we wrote our own curriculums. So the history curriculum in Porthcawl Comprehensive School, for example, would have been a little bit different, at least a little bit different to the history curriculum in Bryn Teg or Bryn Tivian. We wrote our own, and with different sorts of successes, and there were lots of successes there, but lots of drawbacks as well. It's unthinkable now to think that in those days top-down decisions about curriculum in Wales came from some minister in London, and we're so used now to having a Welsh government and operating with Welsh government that seems like a very distant memory, but it was a very real memory. And I can remember Keith Joseph as Mrs. Thatcher's education minister agonising over national curriculum. No, it wasn't called national curriculum, it's called national criteria for the new GCSEs. And then I can remember Ken Baker's national curriculum, which was very much a top-down thing, very different to this new Welsh curriculum because it was based in 19th century ideas of the importance of subject specialisms. It wasn't developed along with teachers, it was developed with all sorts of strange people. So, for example, the history curriculum was designed by a retired naval Rear Admiral, if I remember correctly. It was very strange, and Ken Baker got to be a bit of a bogeyman. I've revised my views of Ken Baker actually because recently he's made some very, very wise and important statements about the 16+ curriculum, and he's one of the few people in the UK Parliament arguing against dropping BTECs and against these newfangled T levels, as they're called. Sooner or later, curriculum will become bound up with assessment. So a little bit further along the line, we're going to have to look again at GCSEs and A levels. Again, we've had a few goes at revising 16+ curricula. We'll have to have a look at that again in Wales at some stage. I can remember when an AS was half an A level, but you couldn't do the other half. And then AS was half of an A level, then you could do the other half. And then AS was 2 halves, but the 2 halves weren't quite equal. And now we've got a situation where ASs are withering on the vine in England, but they still got a role in Wales. And we've never really tackled in Britain, let alone in Wales, the problems of over-specialisation at 16+, which other European countries don't share. And we still haven't cracked the problem of equal parity between academic and vocational studies in schools or in life in general. But we can't say that this new Welsh curriculum is top-down. It's very much been developed in cooperation with professionals and in cooperation with people who know what they're talking about in terms of classroom experience of young people. I do commend it to this committee. I think we need to be very supportive of it. I would also say that it's a very good thing that it's been phased in. You know, I've as a chief examiner, I was involved in 3 or 4 large curriculum changes to do with A levels, and they were always rushed. They weren't properly consulted on, and teachers weren't given enough preparation time. It was always a big bang when it happened, and it was always reactive, and again, it was always top down. This is the exact opposite of that. It's phased. If you print out the report and file it somewhere useful, and you forget where we are in the phases, it's all there. And I think it'll be 2025 or 2026 by the time that the whole of Wales and all students in our schools are being exposed to this curriculum. So I think that's an excellent feature. Is being brought in a planned and prepared way, which does make a change.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Right, thank you both. I've got no hands up from our pre-meeting. The first person I'd like to bring in is Canon Reverend Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got a question around the right of withdrawal. With the introduction of the new curriculum, the right of withdrawal from what is now going to be called RVE, which was called RE, and RSE is being taken away from parents. It's a highly contentious issue, and I've got evidence to show that it will probably end up in the High Court. What I'd like to know is what provision is being made by Central South and by the local authority to begin to provide support for head teachers and heads of RE and heads of PSE to support them when they're challenged by parents. This has become particularly difficult because we're going to have confusion among siblings. You have a child in year 7 whose parents have had the right to withdraw taken from them, but if their sibling is in year 8, then they still have that right of withdrawal. It's a very, very confusing issue. I've been involved for some while in the discussions about this, wearing a hat as chair of the Welsh Association of Sacres, and Kirsty Williams didn't seem to appreciate or wouldn't appreciate the difficulties it was going to cause and would brook no discussion at all. So head teachers, heads of RE are going to need huge support, and I'm just wondering what provision is being made to prepare that support for them. Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry that was long-winded, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands the confusion there's going to be come 2022.
Thank you. Are you okay to respond to that, Natalie?
Yes, I am. Yes. So, you know, this will need clarification, and it'll need clarification for head teachers, governing bodies, parents, pupils, and we will work very closely between the region and local authorities with regard to this. We've recently appointed, we've always supported local authorities with SACRA from Central South, but we've recently appointed and expanded that role. So we have a part-time, a 3-day-a-week person working with us, seconded from a school, supporting our 5 local authorities with SACRE, and also with religion, values and ethics as an advisor. So they will obviously be working really closely with the local authorities, with schools, on providing that support. And there will obviously be need with legal support and with the SACRE within the local authority. So that partnership will be really important for clarity.
Yes, the advisor from Central South has already been in touch with me to ask my advice on withdrawal. We have a problem in one school in Bridgend, and the person whom I happen to know because she was head of RE at Bryn Tywyn at one time, has come to me as the author of a book on managing the right to withdraw from identification to seek guidance and advice. So even those who are the professionals, still it's all a little bit up in the air. Yeah. And we do really need to get to grips with this, because it's going to be highly contentious. And the information that is coming to me as chair of WASACRA is that there will be people like Jehovah's Witnesses, Muslims, and other religious bodies that it will end up in the High Court.
And this whole period of transition will be particularly tricky, as you say, because of current curriculum and the rollout as well for different ages.
Yes, you're going to have 2 children in the same family, one of whom has their parents have the right to withdrawal, the other hasn't. It's a mess, to be frankly, an absolute mess. Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that support our head teachers and heads of RE. And again, in primary schools where there isn't a head of RE, very often RE is picked up by another subject teacher who may not therefore be au fait with the current situation. So Central South Local Authority does need to get its act together. I'm sure it is. I'm not criticising anyone's sense, but just to be aware of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Yeah, I'm sure Natalie will really appreciate your expertise on that matter. Mr. Power, can I bring you in, please?
Just very briefly, I know that the mandatory curriculum was consulted upon, wasn't it, just recently, and the deadline for the end of that consultation was the 16th of July. I don't know whether or not the outcome of that consultation in relation to the mandatory elements of the curriculum has been published. I haven't seen it, and I was just wondering whether or not it's actually been accepted yet. Because obviously what we're doing in schools is making decisions around whether to roll it out, but it has to be the case that it's been, that the consultation itself then and the outcomes arising from it have been communicated to us. So at the moment it's just inquiry work that we're undertaking in schools, in my school anyway.
Yep, thanks. So on Hub, and any new guidance is there, so keep a lookout through our newsletters, etc. So the updates recently on guidance have been regard to some of the updates with regard to the Act, so the introduction, some of the what matters, YOTUS, etc. But there are then further updates due to come on, legislative guidance, RSE in particular, and assessment, and they're due December.
That's great, thank you both. Can I bring in Councillor Beadle, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My focus is pretty much the same as what Canon Edward Evans was on about, but taking aside the religious education, it was the RSE, and that had been a bone of contention up here in the Llanby Valley because there's a pressure group that had been set up, but their interpretation of what is RSE is somewhat different to what a governor's take is on it, and unfortunately that one school in particular, the head teacher of a primary school, found himself on social media where a parent had actually phoned him up, and they had actually videoed a phone call and put that over social media. I mean that was quite embarrassing for the head teacher, but you wouldn't believe the impetus then that this pressure group gained from it, because they seem to be sharing it and sharing it. But it's how do we get that information across that because the RSE was still in draft form at the time. I don't know whether if it's still in draft form, but obviously it's subject to different interpretation. And as Canon Edward Evans had said, that we could find ourselves with some very serious challenges as a result of that. So my question is, how do we sort of broach this subject with parents who haven't got the right interpretation of what RSE is in the curriculum?
Okay. I'm going to bring my colleague Kath Lewis, who is our lead for curriculum reform, in just a second. But just to say there that so the guidance for RSE is due in December, and that will be the updated guidance. Also, what we make sure we do in Central South Consortium is our phrase is take everything back to source. So we always take, whether it's teachers, head teachers, governors, we take them back to Hub, because Hub is the Welsh Government words, Hub is the Welsh Government guidance, Hub is the actual framework. So interpretations are whether it's through links on our website or whether it's through information that we produce, it's never our opinion as such. We always take everything back to source, everything back to how it's worded in Welsh Government, particularly on areas that are mandatory like RVE, RSE, because it's really important that they're not anybody's interpretation as such. They are exactly what is stated by Welsh Government in their guidance and in their framework. But I am just going to invite Kath just to come in, just to give a little bit more information.
Thank you, Natalie. Yeah, I'm Kath Lewis. Good afternoon. Strategic Lead for Curriculum Reform with Central South. So you're absolutely right that, you know, there are concerns and we're quite aware of those on the ground. We've been working directly with Welsh Government as well because they have received a lot of concern, particularly around RSE and RVE. And if you go to hub.gov.wales, I know I can't put anything into the chat bar for you now, and you go to click on Curriculum for Wales, this is all there for you to see. You don't have to log in. It's available for you. So as Natalie said, what we'd encourage you to do and all governors to do, and it's something that we do in our governor training with them, is to show them some of these sections and show them what it actually says in the framework and what it doesn't. And we spend a lot of time doing that about every element of the framework, that, you know, the Curriculum for Wales is a skills framework. No, there's knowledge in there. This is where it says that. So we're constantly directing back to source. And if you go to Curriculum for Wales and you go to the Designing Your Curriculum section, in a section called Cross-Cutting Themes, you will find then a section on relationships and sexuality education, and that is the guidance as we have it for RSE. In December, we will then see on the framework on Hub, there will be a further update with further information and supporting materials for RSE, because that's being worked on at the moment, similar for religion, values and ethics as well. But RSE, relationships and sexuality education, sits as a cross-cutting theme, something that is the responsibility of every teacher. So you would be embedding the principles of relationships and sexuality education through your history lessons, your geography, your English lessons, just like we embed literacy and numeracy and digital competence. RVE, relationships, values and ethics, when that guidance is released to us, the final guidance released to us in December, that guidance sits within the humanities area of learning experience and within that guidance. So it's just important even sometimes to know where to get it, and that's something that we spend time doing in our governor sessions on Curriculum for Wales. Just really briefly, relationships and sexuality education, there is no right to withdraw. It's surrounding 6 themed areas that teachers have to be aware to plan for, and they are rights and equity, relationships, so safe, consensual, healthy, fulfilling relationships, sex, gender and sexuality. So that's that one theme out of 6 that really tends to get the hairs running. Bodies and body image, sexual health and well-being, violence, safety and support. So all of the guidance is surrounding those 6 thematic areas for RSE, but we have shared with our schools a Welsh Government publication, because they were so concerned about the myths and the misconceptions in the system about RSE. They wrote a piece and they sent it out. Head teachers should have already had that. We can share it with you as a reminder, and you can send it to your schools, and it says what RSE is, what it isn't. So that's come directly from Welsh Government. They're aware of the need to help to support schools and governing bodies with this, because it's really contentious. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bring in Councillor Charles Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I would just like to say that we've just heard some really good advice there from our CSE friends and colleagues. And I think the best advice we can take is to take things back to base, as was recommended there. There will be misconceptions out there. There will be people speaking on behalf of groups that they have no right to speak about. There will be assumptions made, for example, about how Muslims are going to react. Well, I've got Muslims in my family. I've got 2 little grandchildren who are Muslims in a multicultural part of Cardiff. And I can tell you that their father and the young ones themselves are not at all concerned about this aspect of the curriculum. But if there are concerns, then the experts to consult are not Wayne and Winetta on Facebook. The experts to consult are here with us in CSE and in our own directorate.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Beadle, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, I think that covered it. I think that some of these pressure groups that are anxious, I mean, that given the fact that it's going to be relationship and sexual education, is the fear that some of these children might start disclosing, because then they begin to realise that some of the relationships that they have had are inappropriate. Which brings us on back then to safeguarding and child protection. I mean, it's important, and I just had a distinct, well, should I say, a gut reaction that some of these people wanted to ensure that their children didn't make those disclosures, and that's why they was afraid of this area within the curriculum.
Thank you, Councillor Beadle. Okay, I think that's brought that bit to a close, unless there's anything further. Councillor Edward Evans, please. Oh, sorry, Canon Edward Evans. I've called you everything today.
You've everything today. Yes, it's fine. Yes, I take Councillor Smith's point and Councillor Beadle's point. A lot of this stems from what is the parental right. Is it the right of the parent to educate their children in religious matters and in sexual health matters, or is it the right of the school to do that? And I think this is where the conflict and dilemma for lots of people arises. Should that part of education be restricted to parents, or should it be a much wider area, i.e. schools? There will be lots of people who will be very happy with this part of the curriculum. There will also be those who are vehemently opposed to it. And I just think that we need to be very much aware of the sensitivities of parents in this, and guardians and others in this matter. Those who see it as their right to educate their children in these particular areas. With regard to guidance, I've been involved in the writing of the guidance for RE. We've had several consultations, waiting for the outcome of the last consultation. I think it was the worst piece of legal advice I've ever read in my life. It was appalling in terms of grammar, in terms of spelling, in terms of everything. I'm glad to say that that's now been dramatically amended. So we just hopefully, before it does go live in December, we have a chance to have a look at it again to make sure it is actually correct. But some of the stuff that's coming out from Welsh Government is not always as accurate as we'd like it to be. So yeah, that's just a point I wanted to make about parental rights and interpretation. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Do you want to come back, Natalie?
Just to reassure everybody really that obviously, we always point back to source, we always support schools, but we put a lot of professional learning alongside much of this as well. So whether that's professional learning for governors or head teachers or practitioners, teaching assistants, etc. As soon as documents are published, as soon as we've made sense of them for schools, we put lots of professional learning alongside those. So for instance, there's been 3 years, we're in our 4th year now of a pilot project with regard to relationships and sexuality education that's been there. There will be further iterations of that moving forward. So I just wanted to remind everybody that we do provide then the professional learning and support that goes alongside any guidance and any publications.
Thank you very much. I've got no further hands up. I've got a couple more questions from the pre-meet, and I'm not sure if you both think that they've been covered. Lindsay Morris, you had something to mention, and also Councillor Cheryl Green. If you feel like the matters have been covered, then just leave your hands down. Okay.
Chair,
Yeah.
Lindsay Morris has had to leave. Sorry, she has contacted us.
Right. Okay. Councillor Green, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I say yes? I found the report very comprehensively, written and an easy read. There was one thing on there though that I couldn't really reconcile with, and that's 8.1. There are no financial implications linked to this report. Does this mean all the costs have been picked up by the Welsh Government?
Yes, please, Lindsay, if you can. I know we've got no financial staff on today, so.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Green, obviously it is a good question because ultimately there could be financial implications with regard to this report as it currently stands, because the nature of the report is more for information. There's no current financial implications, but you're absolutely right. What we'd need to do is to monitor this very carefully, because as the curriculum rollout gathers pace and obviously moves through to the full implementation, we'd obviously need then to continue the support from Welsh Government with regard to funding for it. Our schools will obviously be acutely aware of that, and also our colleagues in Central South supporting it.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all. I don't appear to have any other hands up. If there's no further question, that's fine too. I think we've gone through the report well. So I'll just take you to the recommendations for 9 to 5. At item 5, the committee is requested to consider the recommendations of the cover report set out in paragraph 9.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much, both. I'd just like to say thank you very much for Natalie and everybody else who's invited today and the work that you put into the reports and for being online. We're going to move to the forward work programme, so you can stay if you wish, but I'm sure you'd like to get on with other things. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Diolch.
Okay, so item 6, the forward work programme. If I can ask you to present the report, please, Meryl.
Thank you, Chair. Members will have the forward work programme in their packs. They considered the forward work programme previously at the meeting on the 16th of September. The updated work programme is attached as Appendix A and will be included to the next report to COSC with any updates. In addition, the recommendations monitoring action sheet is attached to Appendix B to track responses to the committee's recommendations at previous meetings. I do have an amendment to make people aware of, Chair, as discussed with yourself. Due to the late settlement from Welsh Government not being until 21st of December, we will need to move the scrutiny of the budget from the December meetings to after Cabinet on the 18th of January, similarly to last year. So we will be reporting back on provisional dates for that, subject to agreement at Council. And we will also need to liaise with directors regarding bringing reports forward for December meetings, which had been held for the MTFS and budget proposals.
Yeah, thanks, Meryl. I don't know if anyone's got any comments on we've just got the one item on the 8th of December. If we're not able to discuss that, we could bring one of the reports forward from the 17th or the 14th, dependent on whether or not that's agreeable with the with Lindsay. So we've got how schools coped with the pandemic, the Youth Justice Service, and the post-inspection action plan. What's your thoughts on it, Meryl? Do you think would you advise us to put the meeting off in December?
I think we need to discuss it with the chair, chair. We need to discuss it with the director as to timing of those reports, and also there was the briefing on safeguarding as well. So I'm sure we can bring something from the work programme.
That's right. So the safeguarding briefing. Yeah. Sorry, I did forget. Is everybody okay with that?
We'll come back to you.
Yeah, there's no comments on that, so that's okay as well. So we're just asked to, the committee's requested to consider the recommendations of our cover report. Just a mover and seconder for our forward work programme, please.
I'll move, Chair.
Thanks, Jane.
Second.
Yeah. Tom. And item 7, the urgent items and no urgent items. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending the meeting today. I don't need to read the next bit out, do I, Meryl? That's okay, isn't it? Thanks all, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Chair. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Chair.